I get devach. So I'll tell you, Motzei, one of the great Tzadikim, the holy Reb Levi Yitzchak of Arditchev. So the Motzei goes that there was one particular day that Reb Levi Yitzchak seemed to be bothered by something. Like all his Talmidim, Chassidim noticed that he just wasn't himself. So obviously when a tzaddik like that is in such a mood, they're always worried that something's going on in Shemayim, you never know. So at the end of the day, Reb Levi Yitzchak turned to one of the Chassidim and said that it's very important, if they could do him a favor, if they could send a message to Reb Shlomo of Karlin, that he would love. Reb Levi Yitzchak said, I would love if Reb Shlomo Karliner would come pay a visit. So that's what the message was. Okay, fine, that's the word that Rebbe asks. So they sent a message to Reb Shlomo Karliner that Reb Levi Yitzchak would like to see him. So Reb Shlomo Karliner, interestingly enough, the Gabayim of Reb Shlomo Karliner, when they received that message and they conveyed it to Reb Shlomo, they noticed by him that he was mamish, like, 100%, I'm excited, as if he was sort of anticipating it, but just waiting for the invitation. So that's a little bit strange. So Reb Shlomo travels to Barditchev, and he gets to the Barditchever. The Barditchever is Makabel Panim, they receive each other, they hug, and so on. And they begin to talk a little bit, small talk, how you doing, how's the family, whatever. And then they come to the room, and they go inside, where Barditchever sits. Shlomo Karliner sits opposite him, and the Barditchever begins to make motions with his hand as if he's about to start a conversation, but doesn't say anything. And he just sits there. And a little bit later, Shlomo begins to make motions with his hand as if he's like trying to say something. Weiter nothing. And they're just both sitting there. And they're sitting across from each other, looking at each other for a good 15, 20 minutes without any words being said. Until finally, about 20 minutes later, they both burst out laughing. And they hug each other and they leave. Nice like that. So obviously the Chassidim were shocked, like what in the world is going on? So a little bit later, the Chassidim of the Barditchever approached him and said, Rebbe, like, what was the whole thing? What was going on? So Barditchever said like this is what happened. He said, the reason why the other day I was so upset was because it was revealed to me, Min HaShamayim, that the parrots in one of the neighboring shtetlach was a big anti-Semite, and he was plotting to have this gezerah brought against the whole district and a bunch of shtetlach in the whole area, a decree of expulsion, some sort of maybe heavy taxation, some sort of anti-Semitic decree. Now, that parrot by himself couldn't bring such a rule and such a decree over the whole district. So what had to be, said the Barditchever, is that he was organizing a meeting between him and all of his other parrots buddies, and they're going to get together and they're going to have this meeting and decide to make this decree, because the rule is that you can't pass a decree over an entire district unless all the parrots, unless all these Rishayim agree. So this is what the Barditchever says. I was worried that there's going to be this meeting, and I was trying to daven and think I couldn't break it, until it was revealed to me that if myself and Reb Shlomo Karliner partner together in our avodah, we'll be able to help the gezerah to annul the decree. So once I found out about that secret to the Barditchever, so then I immediately asked for Shlomo to come. Now evidently Reb Shlomo also was picking up on this. That's why he was excited when he heard that he was invited. So he comes, and we come together, and Bashgacha Prata said the Barditchever, when Rosh Shlomo Karliner came to my office, it was mamish the same time that this meeting was taking place, the secret meeting amongst all the parrots. And the conversation I was planning to have with Rosh Shlomo was a conversation of what we can do to misak and the Inyan and to bring the Yeshua. And when we both sat together, I felt it and he felt it too, is that there was no Pesach, there was mamish no opening, even though it was shown to me that me and Rosh Shlomo can be poil something, but at the moment when we sat together, it was just such a heaviness. We didn't feel any opening at all to bring a tikkun. So we're just sitting there, and so at that moment we sort of both thought the same thought, which is, listen, it seems that we don't have anything to do in order to fix this gezerah, but in the very least, at least it's two Yidden, at least it's two Jewish people, two friends sitting with each other. Nothing bad can come from that. So we sort of both embraced that moment of realization that we can't really do much, but in the very least, at least it's two Yidden sitting together, and that already is a holy thing. At that moment when we both sort of accepted it, at that moment, an amazing thing took place. That in the meeting, there was one part that was missing, and that was taking so long in the meeting, because in order for this thing to be signed, all the parts had to be present and had to sign it unanimously, and that was the rule. It happens to be one part was missing. Now, when we were sitting there and we accepted the matziv and we just sort of embraced the avodah of just two Yidden sitting together and being b'shalom, being ba'achdos. So at that moment, the door by the parts meeting swings open, and the parts that was missing shows up. Now, really, that wasn't the actual parts. Really, that was Eliyahu Navi disguised as the missing parts. But he comes in, and so they catch him up and everything that's going on. Eliyahu Navi plays dumb, and they catch him up and everything, and they pass him the document in order to sign. It's the Push. The guy he's also an anti-Semite, that part. So why wouldn't he sign? All of a sudden, the parts takes it, and Eliyahu Navi, dressed up as the parts, takes it, and he started reading the contract, reading the document, and he begins to make haris. He says, this wording is not so nice. We could make it a little bit more flowery, or maybe the decree should be like this. And he starts, just raising some questions. Now, meanwhile, the parts that authored that part of the document begins to take a lot of offense. What are you talking about? I wrote it perfectly. All of a sudden, you come in late, and you decide you're going to just change this all around. We spent hours working on this. And another part says, no, but he is making a good point. We could make it nicer. And they all begin to squabble and to fight with each other. Ad kedei kach, it gets to a point where they're so miserably yelling and screaming at each other, the document actually is ripped up, and they say, forget this whole thing. We can't stand the sight of each other, and they all leave. So said the Berditchever to the Chassidim, he said, look what happened. I thought that I was going to be able to be pile things myself, and with Rishon and Karlin, we're going to be pile, we're going to daven and all that stuff. And we weren't able to do it like that. But you know what happens? Look at the difference, how the Yeshua came. The Yeshua came with this ending of what? Of two Yidden being in the same room, not even saying anything to each other, and that itself was an environment of such shalom and such achdus, whereas comparing that to a room full of Peritzim, full of these parts, anti-Semites, who are speaking to each other, who are both there for the same tachlis, who can easily get it done, who are all on the same page, and still, with all of that, they're full of strife and full of machlekes. And that itself, that contrast itself of two Yidden that have nothing to say to each other, to bond them together, and yet they're still connected. And conversely, a room full of parts that have everything to say to each other, to unite them together, and still they can't be united, that itself brought the Yeshua. So you have no idea what Achdus can do, Even Achdus doesn't have to be so fancy. Just sitting in a room with another Yid and just thinking about how we're not yelling and screaming at each other. It's also called Achdus. It's also called Shalom. Hashem should bless us that in the schus of Achdus Yisrael we should see Nechamis and Yeshuas and Geulas in the month of Adar, the Chodshe, the months of Gula itself. We should to see Geulas and Yeshuas and Nechamis ad b'li dai v'yizkal tzedek.